Our distinguished scholar is Professor Rosa Maria Perez from Portugal, and she'll be speaking on rewriting the Curumbim, a mistranslation, memory, and the recovery of indigenous epistemologies. Professor Perez is a former professor at the Department of Anthropology, University of Lisbon, and is currently a senior researcher at CRIA in anthropology. From 2000 to 2010, she was a visiting professor of anthropology at Brown University in the US, holding joint appointments in the Department of Portuguese and Brazilian Studies, the Department of Anthropology, and the Watson Institute for International Relations. Furthermore, she has been a visiting professor of anthropology at the Indian Institute of Technology, IIT, Gandhinagar, since 2012 and continued in this role until 2025. Her primary research interests are in Indian society and social segregation, with a particular emphasis on Dalits and women, as well as on colonialism and post-colonialism in India. She also investigates fieldwork methodology, the intersection of public anthropology and human rights, and the relationship between anthropology and cinema. It's with great expectation that we are now going to listen to Professor Rosa Maria Perez. Please.
Thank you very much, Professor, for introducing me. I'd like to thank my dear friend, Professor João Ribeiro, for inviting me to attend this conference. I'm very sorry that I cannot be in person, since I love Delhi, where I've been so many times. So without any further time, I will start to read my paper. I wrote it in order to try to keep within the time ascribed to me. So I will start now. From the earliest representation by the Portuguese regarding social groups in Goa, we find the classification of Curumbim, with Curumbina as its feminine counterpart, in an article that explores the role of the Pai dos Cristãos, father of Christians, and the enslaved populations in Goa. Patrícia Sousa de Faria takes us back to 1682 and highlights the Jesuit Francisco do Rosário. On September 22 of that year, he approached the father of Christians in Goa to report that he possessed the boy named Domingos, who was born in the village of Sanquilim and belonged to the Curumbim caste. I will address the contradiction between the terms caste and Curumbim later. For now, let us focus on the case of Domingos. He was acquired for the purpose of being educated in the Catholic faith, and the father of Christians, Pai dos Cristãos, decided that Domingos would serve the Jesuit for 8 years. As the author notes, Patrícia Sousa Faria, and I'm quoting, the episode of the boy Domingos represents just one among hundreds of similar cases evaluated by the father of Christians between 1682 and 1700, involving enslaved individuals and others who held, and I'd like to underscore, ambiguous statutory dependency in Goa. The legal, as we know, the legal responsibilities of the Pai dos Cristãos in Goa were diverse, aimed at ensuring the propagation of the Christian faith and the protection of converted populations, especially the enslaved. And the office had several key functions, including facilitating Christianization, supervising slaveholding practices, and enforcing laws relating to the liberation and conversion of enslaved individuals. os ofícios da Inquisição de Goa, the Inquisition Records for Goa, which I assessed and are accessible online through the Biblioteca Digital Luso-Brasileira, include a striking case involving Pedro Curumbim. The initial official document requests information pertinent to these proceedings, which are regarded, and I'm quoting, of utmost importance, excuse me, and have been collected from the archives of the Inquisition. A subsequent dispatch contains the opinion to the General Council of the Portugal Olive Office, addressing observations made by the Council that were contrary to the course of the proceedings against Pedro Curumbim. Additionally, another dispatch titled The Opinion to the Inquisitorial Board of Goa points out the contradictions encountered during the proceedings against Curumbim, who faced accusation of gentility. Ultimately, we arrived at the opinion issued by order of His Majesty, I'm putting into English, concerning the Pedro Curumbim proceedings, which details his imprisonment in the Inquisition dungeons for the crime of gentility. Well, just for now, I'd like to highlight this kind of overlapping of kind of confusion regarding the Curumbim and the last resource to the King of Portugal. So my purpose of reproducing these official documents, and of course I'm not an historian, I'm an anthropologist, is to highlight a central theme found in the Goa Holy Office proceedings. The Curumbim symbolize a broader concept of gentility. And as my colleagues historians very well know, during the 17th and 18th centuries in Goa, the idea of gentility emerged as a significant focus within colonial and religious discourses, functioning as a tool for differentiating and hierarchically organizing non-Christian social groups. This categorization became ingrained in the structures of the Portuguese colonial administration, Catholic missionary activities, and most notably the Goa Inquisition. So the rejection of social and religious diversity was not merely a characteristic of Portuguese colonialism in Goa. It persisted beyond the colonial period, evolving into a form of stratification, and I would like to underscore this, beyond the colonial period, in a form of social stratification that continued to exclude non-Hindus, such as the Curumbi's, which in fact correspond to the tribe of the Kunbi. This distinction later became a focal point for Indian anthropologists and politicians who address the tribes of India, often referred to as Adivasi. So the analysis of administrative documents, which I started because this is a new research that I am starting, reveals in both feminine and masculine forms a term that broadly encompasses relatively undifferentiated groups, unlike the Hindu castes, primarily associated with agricultural labor. Furthermore, certain colonial records related to confrarias, I don't know if I can translate as confraternities, and administration in Goa, reference indigenous groups such as the Curumbis as part of the local populations subject to tributes as well as religious and social regulations. So many years ago, indeed many years ago, in a study, my study of Portuguese travel literature as a kind of inception or an archaeology of the anthropological knowledge, I suggested that from the 15th and 16th centuries onward, this literature, this travel literature, highlighted Christianity as a cultural translator, shaping perceptions and representations of cultural difference. This translation can be categorized into two frameworks, what I call an ethnography of similarities and an ethnography of the differences. The Curumbis, whom I did not analyze at that time, would be an apt example of the latter. Their culture and religious distinctiveness, being viewed as pagans, often led to associations with practices such in this literature, such as cannibalism, witchcraft, and in most cases, incest, some practice that were behind the culture. In a more recent work, my work, grounded in extensive ethnographic fieldwork in India, I tried to illustrate how certain groups, often viewed as other, have been marginalized and rendered largely invisible. From a classificatory perspective, they frequently encounter social indifference. Notably, while Portuguese colonialism characterized the Curumbis as unprivileged agricultural workers, early significant studies on Indian tribes, different studies on the tribes of India, well, some of them I have with me, failed to mention them or even the tribes of Goa. Even more intriguing for me, an anthropological perspective, is the common overlap between the Kumbis and another tribe of Goa, the Gaure. These two tribes are nearly indistinguishable, yet to external, disinterested, and inattentive observers, they are often aggregated in a single group. The complexity of this classification runs deeper. Both the Kurumbis and the Kumbis are frequently categorized as castes, specifically as Shudras, as we know, a designation associated with socially devalued castes, or better saying, Varna. I'd like to highlight the counter practices through which indigenous actors like the Kumbi strategically navigated and subverted this linguistic appropriation. Among these are the reinscriptions of Kurumbi identity within ritual, mythical narrative, and communal memory, forms of what I could term counter-translation. This intervention preserves ontological continuities even within the environments of discursive domination, demonstrating how subaltern speakers reanimating the meanings that colonial archives sought to contain. Ultimately, a systematic anthropological study of the Kumbi, which I initiated, could advance a decolonial critique of translation as a power-laden process that structures anthropological knowledge itself. By revealing how the category of the Kurumbi was linguistically and conceptually reconstructed, it situates mistranslation as central to the making of colonial and post-colonial epistemologies. I would like now to invite you to move to the anthropological level, more specific to the ethnographical level. So consider a closer ethnographic approach to the Kumbi. The Kumbi of Goa are considered one of the earliest known community settled in the region, often believed to be descendants of the Aboriginal inhabitants of Goa. They traditionally belong to an agricultural group known for their hard work and deep connection to the land. Historically, excuse me, the Kumbis have been associated with Hinduism, but due to Portuguese colonial influence, many were converted to Christianity, or better say, Catholicism. However, the community today practices a variety of religions, dominantly Hinduism or Catholicism, but they are dominant, a tribe, and as such, they are enemies. The Kumbis form part of what has been categorized as OBC, other backward classes, not ST, scheduled tribes, in Goa, and maintain strong ties to their tribal customs and social structure. Throughout their history, they have experienced social and economic transformation, but still retain much of their indigenous knowledge and cultural identity, which is integral to Goa's broader cultural fabric. Overall, the Kunbi represent a resilient indigenous group that continues to assert its epistemic and cultural presence despite colonial disruptions and subsequent socio-political changes. The community has preserved an ancient folk traditions, and for those who know Goa, this is pretty obvious, including distinctive dance forms performed primarily by women. They have a rich cultural heritage, especially in traditional crafts such as weaving, and particularly the Kumbi sari, known for its vibrant colors and way of dressing, which is a testament to their textile skills, and has been revived as part of efforts to preserve their cultural legacy. So, local deities and goddesses worship are fundamental to the spiritual and cultural life of the Kumbi community in Goa, reflecting deep-rooted indigenous beliefs and ecological connections. The Kumbis, historical worship goddesses, represented not in Brahmanical iconography, but as primal natural elements, such as rocks, as anthills, known as sateri or bhumika, considered sacred embodiments of the goddess. These natural symbols connect the divine directly to the earth and local landscape, emphasizing an indigenous, non-Brahmanical spirituality. The goddess, often revered by the Kumbi, is seen as a protector of the land and the community, with origins predating colonial and Brahmanical religious frameworks. This goddess is conceived as a Kumbi woman herself, countering dominant narratives that sanitize or Brahmanize indigenous worship practices. Her worship affirms indigenous identity and asserts cultural pride outside mainstream Hindu orthodoxy. So, this resistance to Brahmanical hegemony in goddess worship is part of a wider, can I call it, countercultural movement that seeks to restore tribal dignity and self-respect by privileging in different levels non-Brahmanical aesthetics and ritual forms over colonial and Hindu Orthodox frameworks. The goddess is therefore simultaneously a symbol of social autonomy, representing the Kumbi's assertion of cultural sovereignty amid colonial and caste-based subordination. Her imagery and ritual representation challenge the dominant narratives imposed through history, reclaiming agency for indigenous epistemology. Given the Kumbi's traditional association with farming, many rituals revolve around invoking the goddess blessing for a bountiful harvest, fertility of the soil, and protection of cattle, particularly bullocks, which are sacred for them in agrarian life. Female deities like Kalika or Amba, are local manifestations, such as Bhawani, which, by the way, is a Hindu goddess, as we know, or Mariamma, and they hold particular importance, which also means that they are not, of course, totally isolated from the Hindu influence. And these goddesses, all of them, embody fertility, life-giving forces, and protection. Their worship is often intertwined with rites of passage, community festivals, and healing rituals, thus forming a vital part of Kumbi collective identity and social cohesion. So this worship of the local deities is more than a pure or a mere religious observance. It is an expression of indigenous epistemology where the sacred is inseparable from in the environment, social life, and body politics. In sum, local deities and goddesses for the Kumbis of Goa represent a weaving together of spirituality, ecology, and social order, sustaining a continuity of indigenous knowledge and cultural resilience against historical and social disruptions. As I also wrote recently, it is crucial to give voice to subaltern groups. Rescuing marginalized groups from social invisibility involves not only documenting languages, rituals, and social organization, but placing particular emphasis on preserving their cultural memory, which constitutes the shared repository of knowledge, traditions, symbols, and historical narratives that connect the community to its past and its identity. For the Kurumbis or Kumbis, this memory embodies their unique ways, as I mentioned, of relating to the land, and they constitute the social bonds which were historical suppressed through colonial conquest and historical and contemporary anthropological ignorance. Therefore, I consider, if I dare say so, that it's urgent an ethnographic and historical research that should prioritize the recording and revitalization of oral histories, collective memories, and performative traditions which serve as living expression of their identity and continuity. Preserving, and I'm getting to the end, almost. Preserving cultural memory requires fostering indigenous epistemologies that recognize, in the case of the tribes of Goa, and I would dare to say the tribes of India, recognize knowledge as holistic, relational, and a dynamic process intimately connected to lived experience and environment. This epistemic framework contrasts, obviously, with Western paradigms by emphasizing community, spirituality, and reciprocal relationship with nature and ancestors. Through such preservation, cultural memory becomes a means of resistance against historical erasure and displacement, as well as anthropological erasure and displacement, reinforcing resilience and enabling intergenerational knowledge transmission. The visibility of marginalized groups, such as the tribal communities of Goa, is rooted, as I would like to develop, but I have no time, in complex historical processes that have systematically devalued and silenced their knowledge system and ways of being, not only in Goa, not only in India, well, not only in any, unfortunately, in many parts of the world by anthropologists and historians. This marginalization perpetuates ongoing cultural mistranslations, where indigenous knowledge is often reduced to stereotypes or dismissed as inferior compare it to dominant Western paradigms. In academic writing, excuse me, framing an indigenous epistemology requires centering the unique ways of knowing, understanding, and relating to the world developed by indigenous peoples and over generation, which deeply contrast with Western scientific approaches. Indigenous epistemologies, as I mentioned, emphasize holism, interconnectedness, and the relationality, recognizing knowledge and as inseparable from the knower and the context, often transmitted through oral tradition, experiential learning, and spiritual practices. Methodologically, I believe indigenous epistemologies call for participatory, community-based research approaches that respect cultural protocols and intellectual property rights, highlighting the contextual specificity, spiritual dimension, and collective nature of indigenous knowledge, challenges reductionist, or I'd like to highlight this term, extractive research methods, which we anthropologists often do. Therefore, framing indigenous epistemology academically involves a reflective, dialogical approach that validates indigenous worldviews as legitimate and dynamic systems of knowledge essential for cultural survival, social justice, and epistemic plurality. This approach fosters equitable knowledge production and collaboration between indigenous and non-indigenous scholars. This process, to finish my presentation, not only empowers community like the Curumbis to reclaim their agency and visibility, but also facilitates a decolonization of knowledge production. It supports intercultural dialogue based on respect and mutual understanding, helping integrate indigenous perspectives within broader cultural narratives and affirming their rightful place in contemporary societies. Thank you. I finish. Oh, sorry, I can't see you. Are you there?
Yes. Yes.
I can't see you.
Yes. Yes, we are. Rosa, we are here.
João, I can't see you. Something happened here.
But you can listen, right?
I can listen, but I cannot see.
Okay. I will take a picture.
Let me try to sign again.
Okay.
Now I can see.
Professor Rosa Maria Perez, for a very interesting presentation on a particular social group in Goa and around the Konkan coast of Greece. And the method that one has to understand their worldview as they themselves did and felt. Those of us who come from the Hindi-speaking area would recognize this word, kunbi. It's a term used for a caste or a subcaste specializing in growing and selling vegetables, and also taking to general farming with opportunities. So I wonder if there is a connection. I have no idea about their religion or custom, but the presentation is open for discussion, and I'm sure Professor Perez would like to respond to question and comments. Okay, so the floor is open.
Is there anyone?
No, what to do?
Thank you. No, I don't want to seem to be monopolizing. Thank you very much, Professor Perez, for that presentation. I have a few observations to make. So, intervention that you suggest at the end, and also an alternative, perhaps, which you may
Sorry, the sound is bad.
Not
can't hear. I have to come there?
perhaps. I think you.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'll come. Doesn't matter. Maybe two mics should not be there.
Yes. So please come here.
I have a balance problem, so it take a little time to walk.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Thank you.
Take your time.
Thank you, Professor. I'm Babli Moitra Saraf. I retired from the University of Delhi. And I have observations. Since there's no one asking a question, maybe I can take a little more than a minute to say what I have to say, my response to your paper. You are very much aware as an anthropologist who has worked in India that this is the story of marginalization and oppression is the story not only of colonialism, but also social stratification as it exists in India. So one aspect of it is colonization of knowledge, marginalization of populations, and that can be across the board, but of course these are doubly marginalized being the tribal populations who are looked down in the caste and the Varna system. There are these, therefore there is a double whammy here, There is the colonial oppression and there is the local, if centuries old local social stratification, within which is inherent this kind of both exploitation and marginalization. That is one. That is my first point. So I'm sure you are familiar with your research in India as well as your familiarity with Indian social structures. My second point is that do you think in order to what you're suggesting is to use the word they have to be rescued. Can you hear me now?
The sound is very regular.
Echoing?
Yeah. Maybe if you, can you please
Okay.
if it's a question, I could urge you with some difficulty, but if it's a question, I have to listen
Naturally. Now, if you are looking at, you use the word they have to be rescued, which puts them, the subject, in a kind of passive recipient position. This is my response. Now, in order to encourage what is called, what we know as the organic intellectual, the one who rises from the community, my question, and now I come to my specific question and observation. Do you think that it is patronage by the other hegemonical groups and an encouragement or a state intervention to open up spaces and to confer some kind of legalized position of identity onto such marginalized populations so that they are encouraged to come out, and the state does it so that they are not patronized by any individual group or person or institution. So how important do you think is the state's intervention, not only in this of course is a specific instance, but this is across the board. And I am very interested in knowing because what you think about this, because I think the state's information and laws in this case are very important to draw out the marginalized and oppressed populations who otherwise are contested spaces amongst many such tribes and peoples placed in the same kind of spectrum? Thank you. That's my question, specific question.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. It's very crucial for me as an anthropologist. Maybe the term rescue is not to rescue them, but to rescue their knowledge and integrate it and consider it as a knowledge production within the anthropological production and a larger production by the social sciences, which to a large extent have ignored them. And indeed, in one of my classes, I was, my courses, I was talking about indigenous epistemologies, and I did not mention an European or American scholars. They are bright indigenous scholars who are now reflecting and offering a knowledge that has been ignored. When I mean rescue, is not about rescue or having an hegemonic or hierarchical intervention. Indeed, since I wouldn't say a long time, because I have been working in India for more than 40 years. I started field work for my PhD thesis in a village of Gujarat. So what I have been trying to practice and teach both to my students, for my master and PhD students, is what is called collaborative ethnography. It's not the observer that imposes him, her, or themselves to the what used to be called the subjects. On the contrary, there is reciprocity, there is dialogue. For example, to give you an example, one of the the research that I carried out in Gujarat with the Dalit community, I never wrote it because I decided from its inception to adopt a collaborative approach. But at the end, they were illiterate, the women, they could not write. So I'm still waiting, despite the price, and I apologize for saying this, that the project was supported, it was given an award, but I never published because I'm waiting for the time to sit with them and to reproduce their voices, not mine. So it's not about an hierarchical imposition of the observer. It's about a collaborative research. It's about to listen to their voices and reproduce their voices. And this has not been done. I'm talking as an anthropologist, and not at all in Goa. In Goa, indeed, the Kumbis, some of the Kumbis have converted to Hinduism. Therefore, we can consider them as caste. Well, but they are tribes. In fact, they are a tribe, and this social categorization has been all the time mixed up. The other day I was not arguing, but I was having a huge conversation with a bright historian. Indeed, he was the founder of the what is the name in the Portuguese conference, Professor Luís Filipe Tomás, was one of the founders in 1978. And he said they are Shudras. And I said, sorry, they are not Shudras, they are a tribe. And oh my God, he knows so much more than I. He's an amazing historian. And founder of this group of the Indo-Portuguese studies. So there is this misunderstanding because people don't listen to their voices. I don't know if I answer your question. I didn't listen very well to it, but I hope I did.
You want to go there?
Just say a word.
Okay.
Thank you, Professor. I get your methodology of collaborative ethnography and listening. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah. Okay. You are also interested in translations and mistranslations. It says in your abstract. I had gone through it very carefully and interests me a lot. There are translations tradition somewhere, some of us do it, of oral narratives, because the authenticity of the voice cannot be appropriated by another person who takes on the authority of the translator. I mean, that authority has to be conceded, given, or earned by some kind of intervention. So I'm interested in what you're saying, and it is true, not everyone has found a voice, but many of us who work with people who cannot read or write but have something to say. I myself have worked on the partition, the accession of Jammu Kashmir to India, and the riots that followed around it in my hometown in Rajouri, which is on the border of J&K. And there are people there who do not read and write, but they have stories to tell. So one has to establish one's position as the person who is given, conceded that authority rather than appropriated it to tell a story. So I think that involves a whole different kind of methodology. And I think we need to think about that, because that is the story of our country. I mean, there are so much orality. We are primarily an oral population. So much orality, especially in the marginalized groups, that we need to tread really, really carefully around these narratives, and they have to be retrieved, but they have to be retrieved from within.
Yes, I agree.
Thank you.
Give me a minute. I will pick up a book.
Did she ask me to stay? No.
No.
He's going to show you a book.
So this is my last book published in English by Routledge. It's called Transdisciplinary Ethnography in India, Women in the Field. I'm not going to bother you quoting myself. And I invited a group of colleagues from different areas, therefore the term transdisciplinary and women in the field to reproduce Women in the Field by Peggy Gould so many years ago, about women speaking about their own experiences with women in India. And they are dominantly Indian colleagues, even though I invited one Portuguese and a very dear friend, Professor Lina Frusetti from Broad University. And one of the things that I wrote goes directly to what you say, to what it's about voice. I wrote quite a lot about voice, and to what extent do I have the authority to reproduce their voice? That is one fact. And the other one is to what extent am I reproducing their voice, or am I interfering in this reproduction? So this is a very complex problem that we anthropologists don't deal with, or with translators. And indeed, it's thank you so much. Is a crucial point, especially for anthropologists. To what extent are we reproducing indeed a voice? And it's not. It's also about. It's about authority, but it's also about authorship. They are the authors, and that's why I also wrote about extraction and extractive research. It's not about, usually now there is a huge debate about extraction of objects, of artifacts, of art, but anthropology has been very extractive and I think you pointed out. There is always this problem that indeed it's raised at its inception. Do I have the authority even to determine the object of my research? Do you know what I mean? That's something that anthropologists usually don't observe. And there is something else, of course, even though I've dedicated all my professional life to India, I'm not Indian. So my life story is there at the time when I observe, when I try to collaborate. So of course, the problem of translation is always there, and is always a problem.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is there any question or comment on the presentation or on Professor Perez's responses? Professor Perez, you mentioned in the beginning your as one of your sources Inquisition records. Can you tell us a bit more about this and the reference to Kumbis?
Well, unfortunately, I cannot, Professor. I tell you, I was very honest. I told my dear friend, Professor João Ribeiro, that I would present a research that I started. So this is an original. I'm now writing. I was invited to publish a chapter of a book, but I'm far from being an expert on the Inquisition. I would never dare. So what I've been doing is they are available online some officios of the Inquisition, and what I tried to do was to identify those who mention the Curumbis or Curumbina. The term exists in Brazil with another sense: servant, young boy, young man. But I'm not an expert. And also at the same time, what I'm doing is reading those who have written about the Inquisition, those who are supposedly experts on Inquisition. I am not. And far from that, I'm a mere anthropologist for whom history is crucial since day one. When I carried out my fieldwork in Gujarat, my long-term fieldwork in Gujarat, I went to Ahmedabad and tried to read as many books of history as I could and acquire, as well as books of history of India, which I have read all over my life, of India, because I cannot conceive or consider the structure or the process of an anthropological research without the structure, the history. But I'm not an historian. I'm an anthropologist. So I'm so sorry, but I cannot reply.
That's okay. Any other question or comment? So,
I do have a comment this morning.
yeah, please. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Rosa Maria. It was wonderful to hear you as always. I was thinking about this notion of collaborative ethnography, and I wonder if because I'm not an historian and I'm not an anthropologist, I wonder if the cinema isn't already playing that role. Because I'm thinking about a particular kind of cinema that appeared recently, especially with a Portuguese and Brazilian couple that started filming on Brazil with the tribe of Craho. Yeah, I'm talking about João Salavis and René Nader. And they went to live with the indigenous people, and they let them tell their stories through cinema. So this is collaborative ethnography, right? This is what they are doing. They are giving them the instrument to speak about themselves and to produce new stories about themselves. It is a remarkable cinema. I would advise you to take a look at it.
I would like to. I'd like to watch, because one of the courses I teach is anthropology as anthropology of visual system. Thank you so much. Well,
it's the movies. There are two right now. One of them is called Chuva é Cantoria na Aldeia dos Vivos, na Aldeia dos Mortos, sorry, and the other one is A Flor do Buriti. So these are the two movies, and I think they are still there. So they are still producing new movies all the time. And so the tribe, the Brazilian tribe, the Carajo, they all went to Cannes, to the film festivals, you see. So over a sudden they are at the center of everything. So it's quite remarkable. Okay.
Oh, thank you so much.
I want to add one more film.
Okay. Please.
You want to come? No, I'm just saying. This has to be recorded, so if you can come here.
So, regarding the anthropology, I just want to add.
Can you tell me your name, please?
Oh, I beg pardon. So, regarding the anthropology name, myself Shubhojit Roy. So, just I want to add one more film regarding the anthropology, and it's very popular even in France. So, Aguntuk, which made by Satyajit Ray. So, it's very popular for anthropology.
I
Thank
know.
you.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
There is now. I commissioned an exhibition in Lisbon. Is now in Lisbon on a Goan photographer, an amazing Goan photographer, and I also commissioned a show of Goan documentaries. And the exhibition, the closure of the exhibition on the 28th of December will be a show of 2 movies of Satyajit Ray, which is the director, the world director.
Yes.
And thank you so much, of course. I know that movie. Thank you so much for mentioning. Yes.
Okay. You are most welcome. Thank you.
So if there isn't anything else, it remains my pleasant duty to thank Professor Rosa Maria Perez for a very stimulating presentation. And also my thanks to the participants. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So shall I leave now?
Professor Rosa Maria Perez, you can stay, of course, anytime. But I would ask you to turn off your microphone. We are only having a short round table with a concluding round table, okay? And now, so I would ask Professor João Paulo Oliveira Costa to the table, and Professor Farhat Hassan to join me. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. I will stay for
Thank you.
an hour because I didn't know that I could attend, and then I will leave. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Professor. Thank you so much. See you soon.